When new Suffolk County DA Rachael Rollins ran for office last fall, she got international attention and some condemnation for the 15 crimes she said she would not prosecute, including trespassing, shoplifting, drug possession even with intent to distribute. The Boston Police Patrolmen's Association called her policies dangerous and soft on crime. The National Police Association called them a reckless disregard for the laws enacted by the Massachusetts General Assembly in an official complaint to the state's Legal Oversight Board. But new analysis from the Massachusetts branch of the Civil Liberties Union, called Facts Over Fear, finds that Boston prosecutors have been dismissing those same types of misdemeanors and low-level felonies for years, ultimately dropping nearly 60% of such charges brought in 2013 and 2014. Their analysis also found racial disparities galore, including that black people were also more likely to get convicted, get probation, or spend time behind bars. One of the authors of the study, Rahsaan Hall, the director of ACLU's Massachusetts Racial Justice Program, joins me. Rahsaan, it's good to see you, as always, along with District Attorney Rachael Rollins. District Attorney, it's good to see you again.
You as well.
Were you surprised by any of this stuff, or is this essentially, even if you didn't have the hard data, was this what you based your do not prosecute list on, this
Absolutely.
kind of stuff?
You know, first of all, job well done. I've gotten halfway through the report. It came out this morning, and I, of course, was working today, so I've had a lot of meetings. But we knew this. It's just helpful when you have data supporting it. And when we release something sort of similar to what it is that the ACLU Massachusetts has done, it's going to be very consistent findings as well.
You know, some watchdog groups have said that you actually are prosecuting some of those 15 cases, and to your credit, I've read you acknowledged you have. So where's the disconnect here?
So I think where the disconnect is I said, as a candidate, within 30 days, this policy would be fully implemented. And having been a first-time candidate and now realizing I have a staff of 300, I'm not making excuses, but we've had 10 homicides since I've started, under 3 months, officer-involved shooting, interstate kidnapping resulting in death with Jassy Carrera. So we've had a lot of work to do in addition to implementing these policies. I'm proud that it's already happening at 50 to 60%. We need to get that number up, and I need to train my staff to make sure they know exactly what it is I'm holding them.
So we're in a transition phase.
We're in a transition phase,
Could
but
you
it's happening.
expand a little bit on that racial disparity thing, including the number of people of color who are charged for some of the crimes on that list as compared to whites who have done the exact same thing?
Certainly. You know, particularly the largest disparities are with black people. Even though black people only make up 24% of Suffolk County's population, they make up 33% of the people who are charged with those offenses. And for some of the
trespassing,
driving offenses, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, in those crimes, black people are 3 or 4 times more likely, depending on which offense, to be charged, and are more likely to have an adverse outcome, meaning it results in a guilty sentence or some form of probation.
Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it has to do with the way policing happens in the city of Boston. So back in 2014, ACLU released our report, Black, Brown, and Targeted. It showed that even though black people, again, were 24% of the city of Boston's population, they made up 63% of the people who were stopped, frisked, observed, or had some sort of encounter. And the researchers who did that report even controlled for the crime of the community and a person's prior criminal history. And it showed that even when you control for those things, there's still a disparity. So
is there conscious racism?
I think there's conscious racism. I think there's implicit bias. I think police are deployed to certain neighborhoods, and people who are just living their lives in those communities get caught up in that dragnet.
Is there conscious racism?
I mean, listen, I believe in some circumstances for sure there is, but I will also say where it's even more troubling than those data that Rahsaan is talking about is the fact that we have a very low solve rate for some homicides or non-fatal shootings. And so the very communities that feel over-policed and over-prosecuted, where law enforcement is always there, FIOing people and stopping them, they're not solving the homicides there. So there's a disconnect. We need to make the community know that we care about them and we're involved, and we're gonna solve their crimes as well.
The clearance rate, if it's a white person that was killed, is much higher. This is the stuff that
this is the Washington
Wes Lowry did at
but
the Washington Post.
I will make sure we say the number of white homicides is incredibly low.
I understand
so
that.
I don't want to I want to make sure we put that out there. It's a small sample.
Can we get back to the do not prosecute thing briefly for a second and the data that essentially supports what I would argue you were elected on? If the data is so obvious, why aren't all DAs releasing themselves from the burden of prosecuting these crimes so they can deal? Look at them looking at each other. The camera's on me, unfortunately, as they sideways looked at each other there. Is it because they want to appear tough on crime, or they just don't know what you two know? Well,
look, I think when change happens, a lot of people who've been involved in the system for quite some time have to look at themselves and say, was I wrong? Did I make bad choices? Did I add to mass incarceration? I don't care what their reasons are, Jim, very candidly. All I care about is now I'm your DA. We're talking about this out loud, and we aren't going to allow these racial disparities to continue.
Can we talk about something you were talking about out loud? You were really upset when ICE snatched somebody at a courthouse. I guess it was in January. And in the Globe story on this, and you talk about how, we've talked a lot about this on the show, including with the former police commissioner, chilling effect it has on witnesses, even defendants for showing up. You said you'd get answers. That was 2 months ago. Have you gotten answers?
Yeah, so we've started to get answers. I mean, I've also noticed there are some fragile egos, with respect to this. As far as I'm concerned, we are going to be moving forward with making sure that ICE is not, I won't disclose too much, but we are moving very straightforward with respect to making sure ICE is not coming into courthouses in public places and snatching people.
So you don't think this exactly what happened in January would happen again in March?
I believe
under similar circumstances?
I am hopeful that it will not, and if it does, I think we are going to have a swift response to what it is that we're doing.
Have you gotten some assurances from ICE that they wouldn't do it?
Certainly not. Certainly not.
You did this, I thought, brilliant campaign. What a difference a DA makes.
Yeah, me too.
Polling.
That was really
like
good.
that?
But not just in Suffolk. And it was stunning how little people understood about the functions of DAs and that sort of thing. And then you were at Massachusetts Community College not too long ago, and you said this: for certain communities, which speaks again to the importance that you were emphasizing in the research that led to this campaign, for certain communities of color, and I don't mean any color, you said, I mean Black and Latinx, what your DA does is more important than what your governor, your mayor, and you go down the list does. Why?
Because we touch those communities every single day. There are certain streets where you can't go 2 to 3 houses and find a family that doesn't have somebody who's incarcerated, somebody who is actively involved in the criminal justice system, and not as a court officer or an assistant district attorney. So for me, I feel like what I do deeply impacts communities. I'm not saying what Mayor Walsh or city manager, or Mayor Arrigo does is not important, but many people know who their DA is more than who their state rep or state senator is.
One last thing. During the campaign, you talked about getting rid of cash bail and having a supervised release, except for flight risks. The Berkshire County DA just did it, actually. And is that on the immediate horizon for you?
100%. Yes, it is.
What's the case quickly? You only have a few seconds.
So what the case is bail is only supposed to get you back. Cash bail is supposed to make you come back, and it is criminalizing poverty. We are issuing numbers to people who can't pay them, and they just can't get out because they're poor. But if you had $500, same crime, you get out, you're fine. He's held at Nashua Street. It isn't fair.
Is she on the right track with that? We only have a few seconds.
If she implements the policy, she's on the right track.
What does that mean?
Just tell the people to stop holding people on bail, particularly on these decline to prosecute
Should she just do that tomorrow? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Why aren't you doing it tomorrow?
I'm not saying it won't happen tomorrow.
Might it happen tomorrow?
It might happen tomorrow or Monday of this coming week, if I were to hypothetically say something. But here's the point. We're already doing it at 50 to 60%. So that means that all the people that say what is she doing? What's going on? Dan Conley was doing this already. We're just doing it a little bit more.
DA, it's a pleasure to see you. Thank
Always
you so
a pleasure.
much. Good
Thank
luck with
you.
everything. Rahsaan, congratulations on the report. Appreciate it.